8 months pregnant and fighting back tears, I watched my mother-in-law Diane smile sweetly as she handed me the embossed invitation to her 30th wedding anniversary vow renewal. "We've set the date for July 15th, she announced, maintaining perfect eye contact as she delivered the news. My hands trembled slightly as I held the elegant card, my due date printed in my doctor's handwriting on the appointment card sitting just inches away in my purse. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. July 15th, the exact same day. But that's, I started to say, before she cut me off with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. I know it's short notice, darling, but some dates are just too meaningful to pass up. Her eyes never left mine, and in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty, this was no accident. I met Nathan Wright 5 years ago during a charity run in Lakeside Grove. He was the volunteer handing out water at mile marker 6, and I was the exhausted participant who'd drastically overestimated her athletic abilities. When I collapsed, dramatically at his station, declaring I might actually die right there on the spot, he laughed and offered not just water, but the energy bar he'd packed for himself. By the finish line, we'd exchanged numbers. 3 years later, we were married in the gazebo at Willow Creek Country Club with close family and friends surrounding us. The wedding day should have been my first clue about Diane Wright, while my own mother cried happy tears and fussed over my veil. Diane spent the morning suggesting last-minute changes to everything from the flower arrangements to the seating chart. She arrived at the bridal suite bearing a Wright family heirloom necklace that she insisted would look so much better than the delicate pendant Nathan had given me as a wedding gift. When I politely declined, something flashed in her eyes. Something cold and calculating that disappeared so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. "I just want everything to be perfect," she'd said, patting my cheek a little too firmly. "Nathan deserves nothing less." The subtle digs continued through our first year of marriage. Comments about my cooking that were critiques wrapped in compliments. Questions about my graphic design business that implied it was more of a hobby than a career. Suggestions about our home decor that always ended with her rearranging something when she thought I wasn't looking. I kept the peace for Nathan's sake. He adored his mother, and I couldn't bear to come between them, especially when her comments were always just ambiguous enough that voicing complaints would make me sound paranoid or overly sensitive. Then came the news of my pregnancy. Nathan. And I had been trying for only a few months, and the positive test sent us both into a joyful frenzy. We decided to tell our families at Sunday dinner, hosted as always at Diane and Robert's colonial-style home in Oak Hills. "We have some news," Nathan announced, squeezing my hand under the table. His face was lit with excitement as he looked at his parents and sister Jennifer seated around the formal dining table. "We're having a baby," I added, my free hand resting on my still flat stomach. Robert immediately stood to congratulate us, his genuinely warm hug making me feel truly welcome for the first time in their home. Jennifer squealed and began asking questions about due dates and gender reveals. But Diane remained seated, her fork paused midway to her mouth. "A baby," she repeated, her voice oddly flat. Then, as if someone had flipped a switch, her expression transformed into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How wonderful." She rose gracefully, coming around the table to embrace Nathan first, holding him a beat too long before turning to me. Her hug was brief, perfunctory. "I suppose this means you'll be taking a break from your little design projects," she said as she pulled away. "Actually," I replied, trying to keep my voice light, "I've been building my client base specifically, so I can work from home after the baby comes. I've already started planning how to balance both." "How modern," Diane said with a tight smile. "In my day, mothers prioritize their children." The comment stung, but Nathan quickly changed the subject, and the evening continued with Robert's genuine enthusiasm compensating for Diane's muted response. As the pregnancy progressed, my relationship with Diane deteriorated in subtle ways. She began showing up unannounced at our Riverdale home with baby clothes she'd purchased, all with price tags strategically left intact to show their expense. She questioned every decision, from our choice of neutral colors for the nursery, babies need stimulation, Emma, to my plan for a natural birth, there's no medal for suffering unnecessarily. At 6 months pregnant, complications arose. Dr. Chen diagnosed me with gestational hypertension that required additional monitoring. The condition wasn't immediately dangerous, but needed careful management, especially as we approached the due date, July 15th. We'll need to watch this closely, Dr. Chen explained during an appointment that Nathan had regrettably missed due to a work emergency. If your blood pressure continues to rise, we may need to consider inducing labor, possibly even slightly, before your due date. I nodded, taking careful notes in the pregnancy journal I'd been keeping. I'll make sure to monitor everything and keep stress to a minimum, I promised. Dr. Chen smiled. That's crucial. Stress can significantly impact your blood pressure. Are there any particular stressors in your life right now that we should address? I thought of Diane's constant presence, her subtle undermining, her questions about whether the nursery furniture Nathan had painstakingly assembled was stable enough. But I shook my head. Nothing I can't handle. That evening, I shared the doctor's concerns with Nathan, who immediately went into protective mode. You need to rest more, he insisted, taking the dinner plates from my hands as I tried to clear the table. I'll handle more around the house and maybe we should limit some of our social obligations. I hesitated, then decided to broach the subject that had been weighing on me. Your mom stops by almost daily now, and while I appreciate her concern, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. Nathan's brow furrowed. She's just excited about the baby, Em. This will be her first grandchild. I know, I said carefully. But the constant suggestions and questions, they're stressing me out a little. And Dr. Chen said I need to minimize stress. He kissed my forehead. I'll talk to her. Ask her to give you a little more space. I'm not sure what conversation transpired between mother and son, but Diane's visits decreased, only to be replaced by hourly text messages checking in. When I mentioned to my sister Sarah that it felt like I'd traded one form of monitoring for another, she laughed. Classic Diane move, Sarah said. Nathan asks her to back off physically, so she finds a loophole. The woman's nothing if not persistent. I feel like I'm being ridiculous, I confessed. She's just being involved, right? Isn't that what grandmothers do? Sarah's expression turned serious. Emma, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Those words echoed in my mind 2 weeks later, when Diane and Robert announced they would be renewing their vows for their 30th anniversary. The idea itself was lovely. 3 decades of marriage certainly deserved celebration. But then came the invitation, and with it, the undeniable evidence that Diane's interference had taken a deliberate turn. July 15th, my due date. When I pointed out the conflict to Nathan that evening, showing him the invitation alongside my appointment card, he frowned. That's strange. Mom knows your due date. We've talked about it dozens of times. Should we say something? I asked hesitantly. Nathan sighed. Let me handle it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'm sure it's just an oversight. But I knew better. The calculated look in Diane's eyes when she'd handed me the invitation told me everything I needed to know. This was no coincidence. Nathan called his mother the next day, putting the phone on speaker so I could hear. Mom, about the vow renewal date, he began. That's Emma's due date. We won't be able to attend if you keep it on July 15th. A pause. Then Diane's voice, dripping with rehearsed disappointment. "Oh, sweetheart, I completely forgot. But the venue, the caterers, the photographer, everything's booked and deposits paid. July 15th was the only date the minister could do it, and it's so close to our actual anniversary." "But Mom, this is the birth of your first grandchild we're talking about." "Darling, first babies are almost always late, especially for someone as compact as Emma. Dr. Miller says most first-time mothers deliver at least a week past their due date." I stiffened at the subtle dig at my height and the mention of a doctor I'd never heard of. "Besides," Diane continued, "you know how important family traditions are to me. I always imagined my children would be present for such a significant milestone. Emma will understand." Nathan looked at me helplessly. I could see him torn between his wife and his mother, a position I'd never wanted to put him in. "We'll figure something out," he finally said, ending the call shortly after. That night, as we lay in bed, Nathan turned to me. "Maybe we could stop by the renewal ceremony early in the day, just make a brief appearance, and then be on standby for the birth. First babies do often come late." The fact that he was even considering Diane's suggestion felt like a betrayal. "Nathan, I'll be 9 months pregnant. Even if I'm not actively in labor, I could be uncomfortable, exhausted, or dealing with false contractions. Not to mention Dr. Chen is monitoring me closely because of my blood pressure." I know, he said quickly. "You're right. I just hate being caught in the middle like this." "You're not in the middle," I said quietly. "You're about to be a father. We're starting our own family. That should be the priority." He pulled me close. "You and the baby are my priority. Always. I'll tell Mom we won't be attending." The next day, Diane showed up at our door unannounced, a large binder tucked under her arm. "I've been thinking about the situation," she announced as she brushed past me into the living room, "and I have the perfect solution." She spread the binder open on our coffee table, revealing detailed plans for her vow renewal. "We'll have the ceremony live-streamed. That way, if you're still pregnant, you can watch from home, and if you're in the hospital, you can watch from there. Technology is wonderful that way." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. Her solution completely ignored the real issue, that she had deliberately scheduled her event on a day that should have been focused on the arrival of her grandchild. "Diane," I said carefully, "I appreciate the thought, but that's not really the point. If I go into labor on my due date, Nathan needs to be with me, not at your vow renewal." She waved a dismissive hand. "Labor takes hours, especially for first-time mothers. Nathan can attend the ceremony, it's only 30 minutes, and then join you at the hospital. Robert missed Jennifer's birth because of a business emergency, and she turned out perfectly fine." The casual way she suggested her son miss the birth of his child made my blood boil, but I forced myself to remain calm, remembering Dr. Chen's warnings about stress. "I need Nathan with me," I said firmly. "This isn't negotiable." Diane's pleasant expression faltered for just a moment. "I see." She gathered her binder with deliberate movements. "Well, I suppose some people have different priorities when it comes to family obligations." After she left, I called my best friend Olivia in tears. "Am I being unreasonable?" I asked after explaining the situation. "Should I just accept her live stream solution?" "Absolutely not," Olivia said fiercely. "She's manipulating the situation and trying to make you the bad guy. Classic narcissistic behavior." Nathan's caught in the middle. "No, Emma. Nathan needs to stand with his wife and child. If he doesn't see that, I'll be happy to explain it to him." I laughed, despite my tears. Olivia's protective streak was one of the reasons we'd been friends since college. "What should I do?" I asked. "Stop engaging with her crazy. Don't argue. Don't justify. Don't explain. Just state your position. You and Nathan will not attend, and then change the subject. If she pushes, end the conversation." "That sounds Confrontational. It's called having boundaries, Em, and from what you've told me about Diane, it's long overdue. I decided to take Olivia's advice. The next time Diane brought up the vow renewal, I simply said, "We've made our decision. We won't be attending if it remains on July 15th. Have you thought about trying that new cafe on Maple Street? I hear their pastries are amazing." The abrupt subject change left her momentarily flustered, and for once, I felt like I'd gained a small advantage in our ongoing power struggle. As my pregnancy progressed, Diane's tactics evolved. She began calling Nathan directly, leaving tearful voicemails about how she'd only get one 30th anniversary and how family should come first. She enlisted Jennifer to try to convince me that I was being selfish, and even approached my own mother at a community fundraiser to suggest that I was driving a wedge between Nathan and his family. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries, refusing to engage in arguments while continuing to clearly state our position. Nathan, to his credit, stood firmly by my side, though I could see the emotional toll his mother's manipulation was taking on him. At my 36-week appointment, Dr. Chen noted that my blood pressure was significantly elevated. "I'm concerned, Emma," she said frankly. "We may need to consider inducing labor at 39 weeks if these numbers don't improve." That would be July 8th, I calculated quickly. Dr. Chen nodded. "Possibly. We'll monitor you weekly until then and make the final decision based on your condition. In the meantime, I'm prescribing complete rest. No work, no stress, no arguments." She gave me a knowing look. "Has the situation with your mother-in-law improved?" I sighed. "Not really. She's still planning her vow renewal for my due date." "And that's causing you stress?" "Enormous amounts," I admitted. Dr. Chen made a note in my file. "Then we need to address it. I'm going to be very clear in my medical recommendation. You need Nathan with you, and you need to avoid any situations that might elevate your blood pressure further. That includes family conflicts." Armed with Dr. Chen's medical advice, Nathan called his mother that evening, putting the phone on speaker again. "Mom, Emma's doctor is concerned about her blood pressure. She's recommending complete rest and specifically mentioned that Emma needs to avoid stressful situations, including the conflict over your vow renewal date." There was a pause before Diane responded, her voice honey-sweet with concern. "Oh, my poor dear. High blood pressure can be so dangerous. All the more reason why you shouldn't be stressed about missing our ceremony, Emma. We completely understand." I exchanged a look with Nathan. She was twisting the situation again. "Mom, you're misunderstanding," Nathan said firmly. "The doctor specifically said Emma needs me with her and should avoid family conflicts. The simplest solution would be to change your vow renewal date." "Change the date?" Diane's voice rose an octave. "Nathan, everything is paid for. The invitations have been sent. People have made travel arrangements. It would be a logistical nightmare, not to mention embarrassing to explain." "More embarrassing than your son missing your vow renewal because you scheduled it on his wife's due date?" Nathan countered, an edge creeping into his voice. "Don't take that tone with me," Diane snapped, her pleasant facade cracking. "I've done everything for you your entire life, and this is how you repay me? By choosing her over your own mother?" "I'm choosing my wife and child," Nathan said quietly. "As I should." The call ended shortly after, with nothing resolved except a deeper rift between mother and son. As we entered July, my condition worsened. At my 38-week appointment, Dr. Chen decided that induction would be necessary. "Your blood pressure is continuing to rise despite medication and rest," she explained. "The safest option for both you and the baby is to deliver soon. I'm scheduling your induction for July 10th. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. July 10th meant we would avoid the vow renewal conflict altogether, but it also meant the baby would be coming in just 3 days. When Nathan called his mother with the news, Her response was unexpected. "Oh, how wonderful," she exclaimed. "So you'll definitely be able to attend our renewal on the 15th. The baby will be 5 days old by then. Perfect timing for his first family event." I stared at the phone in disbelief. Even now, with a medical induction scheduled due in part to the stress she'd caused, Diane was still pushing her agenda. Nathan's patience finally snapped. "Mom, listen carefully. Emma will have just given birth. She'll be recovering. We'll have a newborn. We will not be attending your vow renewal. Period. If you continue to push this, you're only damaging your relationship with us and your future relationship with your grandchild." There was a long silence before Diane responded, her voice tight. "I see you've made your choice. I hope you won't regret it." The line went dead. "I'm sorry," Nathan said, looking shaken. "I never thought she'd be like this." I squeezed his hand. "It's not your fault. You're doing the right thing." That night, as we made final preparations for the hospital, Nathan received a text from his father. "Your mother is very upset. Please call when you can." Nathan showed me the message, his expression torn. "Should I call him?" I nodded. "Your dad's always been reasonable. Maybe he can talk some sense into her." The conversation with Robert was brief but revelatory. For the first time, Nathan's father seemed to fully recognize the extent of Diane's manipulation. "I had no idea she'd scheduled our renewal on Emma's due date," he admitted, sounding genuinely shocked. "She told me you both knew about it in advance and had given your blessing." "Dad, that's completely untrue," Nathan said. "We've been telling her for weeks that the date is a problem." Robert sighed heavily. "I believe you, son. Your mother can be determined when she sets her mind on something, but this has gone too far. I'll talk to her, see if we can reschedule." "Thank you," Nathan said, relief evident in his voice. "That would mean a lot to us." The next day, however, brought no news of a rescheduled ceremony. Instead, Diane sent a group text to the entire extended family. "Despite recent health concerns, we're thrilled that Emma's early delivery means Nathan will be able to join us for our special day after all. The ceremony will proceed as planned on July 15th at 3 p.m. at the Grand Terrace. We look forward to sharing this meaningful occasion with you all." My hands shook with anger as I read the message. "She's unbelievable," I whispered. "She's using my medical condition to save face with the family." Nathan immediately responded to the group. "To clarify, Emma is being induced for medical reasons partially related to stress. We will not be attending the vow renewal with our newborn. Please respect our decision and our need to focus on our new family during this time." The responses were immediate and divided the family into clear camps. Jennifer and several of Diane's sisters expressed shock at our rudeness and lack of family commitment. Others, including Robert and some of Nathan's cousins, sent private messages of support and understanding. As the family drama unfolded on our phones, Dr. Chen called with final instructions for the induction. At her suggestion, I turned off my phone, focusing instead on the impending birth of our child. On July 10th, we arrived at Lakeside Memorial Hospital at 7 a.m. The induction process began smoothly, though progression was slow. By evening, I was still in early labor. Nathan never left my side, offering ice chips, back rubs, and steady encouragement through each contraction. As night fell, a nurse named Jasmine came in with an unexpected suggestion. "We have a new program here at Lakeside Memorial," she explained. "It's called Family Connect. For patients with extended labor or special circumstances, we offer private, live streaming so family members who can't be present can still feel connected to the experience." I exchanged a look with Nathan. "Like a video call?" "Similar but more secure. It's a private stream accessible only through a password-protected link. You control who gets access and when the stream is active. Some mothers use it just to announce the birth. Others keep it on during parts of labor so distant family can feel involved. The irony wasn't lost on me. After weeks of rejecting Diane's live stream solution for her vow renewal, here we were being offered a live stream option for the birth. "We'll think about it," Nathan said. As labor progressed through the night and into the next day, the idea kept returning to me. By midday on July 11th, still in active labor but making slow progress, I made a decision. "Let's do the Family Connect thing," I told Nathan during a break between contractions. "But on our terms." He looked surprised. "Are you sure? After everything with Mom?" I nodded. "I'm thinking ahead. Your mother is going to hold this against us for years, missing her vow renewal for the birth. But what if we flip the script? What if we invite them to share in our joy instead?" A slow smile spread across Nathan's face as he understood my strategy. Show them what they'd be missing if they choose the renewal over their grandchild. "Exactly," I said, grimacing as another contraction began. Sometimes the best response to manipulation is radical generosity. Once the contraction passed, Nathan called Jasmine to set up the Family Connect system. By late afternoon, we had a private streaming link that we shared with our immediate families, including Diane and Robert. My labor continued through another night. By the morning of July 12th, Dr. Chen determined that a C-section would be necessary. Within an hour, I was being prepped for surgery, with Nathan by my side in scrubs. Just before I was wheeled into the operating room, Nathan activated the live stream and sent a message to both our families. "Emma is headed into surgery for a C-section. Baby Wright will be here soon. We're streaming for the next hour for those who want to share in this moment with us." The operation went smoothly. At 10:17 a.m. on July 12th, our daughter Lily entered the world with a robust cry that echoed through the operating room. As the nurses cleaned and measured her, Nathan kept the camera focused on our new daughter, narrating the moment for our virtual audience. When he finally placed Lily in my arms, I looked directly into the camera. "Hello, everyone. We'd like you to meet Lily Grace Wright, 7 pounds, 8 ounces, 20 inches long, and absolutely perfect." Nathan leaned into the frame. "Mom, Dad, we wish you could be here to meet her in person. We hope you can visit soon." The comments flooded in. Congratulations from friends, tears of joy from my parents, and heart emojis from Nathan's cousins. But notably absent was any response from Diane and Robert. It wasn't until Lily and I were settled in the recovery room that Nathan's phone rang. It was his father. "She's beautiful," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely beautiful." "Thanks, Dad," Nathan replied. "Did Mom see the stream, too?" There was a pause. "She did." "Nathan, I need to tell you something. We're canceling the vow renewal." Nathan sat up straighter. "What? Why?" "Because family comes first," Robert said simply. "Your mother and I had a long talk last night. She's struggling to admit she was wrong, but she knows it. Seeing Lily born today. It put things in perspective." "I appreciate that, Dad. We'd like to come meet our granddaughter, if that's okay. And maybe we can plan a small renewal ceremony later in the year when you all can attend." "When?" Nathan relayed the conversation to me. I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, relief, and cautious hope. Diane and Robert visited the hospital the next day. Diane was subdued, holding Lily with gentle reverence but saying little. If I'd expected an apology, I was disappointed. But there was something different in her demeanor, a hesitancy, perhaps even humility that I hadn't seen before. As they were preparing to leave, Diane finally spoke directly to me. "She has the right eyes," she said softly. "But your nose, I think." It wasn't much, but it was an acknowledgement of Lily, of me, of our connection to her son. It was a start. In the weeks that followed, we established a new dynamic with the Wright family. Diane's visits were scheduled in advance and limited to an hour. Her suggestions about baby care were offered more tentatively, and when I clearly stated my preference for a different approach, she, mostly, respected it. The vow renewal was eventually rescheduled for October, by which time Lily was 3 months old and I felt recovered enough to attend a family function. During the ceremony, Diane surprised everyone by adding an unplanned moment to exchange special vows with her granddaughter, promising to respect her parents' boundaries and always put family harmony above personal desires. As Lily grows, I remain watchful of Diane's tendency toward control and manipulation. Our relationship may never be warm and uncomplicated, but we've reached an understanding based on mutual respect for our roles in Nathan's life. And in those rare moments when old patterns begin to emerge, I need only mention how meaningful the hospital live stream was to gently remind her of the lesson we all learned. True family celebrations include everyone, not just those who follow your script. Sometimes the most powerful response to manipulation isn't confrontation, but compassion. By opening our most vulnerable moment to Diane, rather than shutting her out, we gave her the opportunity to choose connection over control. The fact that she eventually took that opportunity gives me hope for our future as an extended family, complex and imperfect, but ultimately bound by love for the next generation. The weeks following Diane's vow renewal announcement were filled with mounting tensions. Each morning I woke with a sense of dread, wondering what new tactic she might employ to pressure us into attending her ceremony. My phone would inevitably light up with messages from her, links to articles about babies born late, stories about women who attended important events days after giving birth, and not-so-subtle reminders about family obligations. Nathan tried to shield me from the worst of it, intercepting calls and responding to her messages before I could see them. But Diane was nothing if not persistent. She began enlisting allies in her campaign, starting with Jennifer, Nathan's younger sister. Jennifer appeared at our door one Saturday morning, bearing pastries and a forced smile. "Thought I'd check on my favorite sister-in-law," she said brightly, pushing past me into our living room. At 7 months pregnant, I lacked both the energy and agility to block her entry. "That's thoughtful," I replied cautiously, accepting the bakery box. Nathan was at a weekend conference for work, and I suspected Jennifer had timed her visit precisely for when I'd be alone. She settled onto our couch, eyeing my swollen ankles. "How are you feeling?" Her voice carried the practiced concern of someone following a script. "Like I'm carrying a bowling ball that occasionally practices kickboxing on my bladder," I answered, lowering myself carefully into the armchair across from her. "But otherwise fine." Jennifer nodded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Mom mentioned your blood pressure has been high. That must be stressful." "It's being monitored," I said simply, already sensing where this conversation was heading. "You know," Jennifer continued, examining her manicure with studied casualness, "stress can come from many sources. Sometimes from trying to manage too many obligations, sometimes from causing family conflict." There it was. I took a slow, deep breath, remembering Dr. Chen's warnings about keeping my stress levels down. "Jennifer, I appreciate your concern, but I hope you didn't come here to convince me to attend the vow renewal. My doctor has advised against it." Jennifer's pleasant expression faltered momentarily. "Mom has been planning this for months, Emma. It means everything to her. Surely you can understand how hurtful it is that you're forcing Nathan to choose between his wife and his mother." "I'm not forcing Nathan to do anything," I replied evenly. "He's choosing to be present for the birth of his child, which happens to be scheduled for the same day your mother deliberately chose for her vow renewal, a day she knew was my due date." "It wasn't deliberate," Jennifer protested, though her eyes slid away from mine. "It was the only date the venue had available that was close to their actual anniversary." I set down my teacup with a decisive clink. "Jennifer, I've seen the event calendar for the Grand Terrace. They had at least 3 other weekends available in July. Diane chose the 15th, knowing exactly what she was doing. Jennifer flushed, caught in the lie she'd been fed. Well, regardless, it's too late to change it now. All the invitations have gone out. People have made travel arrangements. That's unfortunate, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady as the baby delivered a particularly vigorous kick to my ribs. But it doesn't change the fact that I'll be either heavily pregnant or in labor on July 15th, and Nathan will be with me. Jennifer's expression hardened. You know, before you came along, Nathan never missed a single family event. Not one. Mom's worried you're isolating him from his family. The accusation stung, despite its absurdity. Nathan and I had attended every Wright family dinner, birthday, and holiday gathering since we'd started dating, often rearranging our own plans to accommodate Diane's last-minute schedule changes. I've never tried to come between Nathan and his family, I said quietly. But I am asking him to prioritize his child's birth over a ceremony that could easily have been scheduled for another day. Jennifer stood abruptly. I can see this conversation is pointless. Mom was right. You've made up your mind to be difficult. After she left, I sat motionless on the couch, feeling the baby shift restlessly within me as if responding to my agitation. I wanted to call Nathan, to vent my frustration and hurt, but couldn't bring myself to interrupt his professional conference with more family drama. Instead, I called Olivia, who arrived an hour later with ice cream and righteous indignation. The audacity, she fumed, pacing my living room after I recounted Jennifer's visit. To come to your house, when you're pregnant and alone, to guilt trip you. That crosses so many lines. I know, I sighed, digging into the pint of cookie dough ice cream she'd brought. The thing is, I don't think Jennifer even realized how manipulative she was being. She's been conditioned her entire life to see Diane's wants as everyone's priority. Olivia dropped into the chair beside me. What does Nathan say about all this? He's firmly on my side, but I can tell it's wearing on him. He doesn't want to hurt his mother, but he's also furious with her for putting him in this position. As he should be, Olivia said firmly. Listen, Emma, this isn't just about the vow renewal anymore. Diane is establishing a pattern that will continue after the baby arrives if you don't shut it down now. Today, it's guilt-tripping you about missing her ceremony. Tomorrow, it'll be undermining your parenting decisions or showing up unannounced during nap time. Her words echoed fears that had been growing in my own mind. I know you're right. But confronting her directly only seems to make things worse. She twists everything I say to make me sound unreasonable. Olivia considered this, twirling her spoon thoughtfully. Then maybe direct confrontation isn't the answer. Maybe it's about setting firm boundaries and sticking to them, regardless of the tantrums she throws. Easier said than done, I muttered, wincing as a Braxton Hicks contraction tightened across my abdomen. Are you okay? Olivia asked, instantly. Alert. I nodded, breathing through the discomfort. Just practice contractions. Dr. Chen says they're normal. Still, maybe we should pause the mother-in-law strategizing for now, Olivia suggested, taking the ice cream container from my hands. Your only job right now is growing that baby and keeping your blood pressure down. She was right, of course. But as I would soon discover, Diane had no intention of letting the matter rest. The following week brought a new development in Diane's campaign. Nathan returned from work looking troubled, a glossy brochure clutched in his hand. What's that? I asked as he sank onto the couch beside me. Mom stopped by my office today, he said, his expression a mix of frustration and disbelief. She brought this. He handed me the brochure, which featured a smiling family with a newborn baby. Across the top, elegant script proclaimed, Welcome to the World, Professional Newborn Photography by Marcus Peterson. She's hired a photographer. For us? I asked, puzzled. While intrusive, it seemed an oddly thoughtful gesture from Diane. Not exactly, Nathan said grimly. She's hired him to come to the hospital on the 15th, take newborn photos, and then bring us, and the baby, to the vow renewal ceremony for a few special family pictures. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. She can't be serious. Oh, she is. She's already paid his non-refundable deposit and arranged for him to have access to the maternity ward. Without asking us, I said flatly. Without asking us, Nathan confirmed. When I told her this was completely inappropriate and that we wouldn't be attending her ceremony, hospital photographer or not, she burst into tears and said she was only trying to find a compromise that would allow her son to be present on the most important day of her life. I set the brochure aside, a headache beginning to pulse behind my eyes. Nathan, this is getting out of hand. She's not listening to either of us. I know, he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I told her the photographer was a complete non-starter and that she needed to stop trying to manipulate the situation. She hung up on me. What did your dad say about all this? Nathan shrugged. He texted me later to say Mom was upset and that we should try to understand how important this ceremony is to her. And the birth of their grandchild isn't? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Apparently not. As important as Diane's social calendar, Nathan muttered. He took my hand, his expression softening with concern. How are you feeling? I know all this stress can't be good for you. I'm managing, I said, though the persistent headache and the swelling in my hands told a different story. But I'm worried about my next appointment with Dr. Chen. If my blood pressure hasn't improved. Nathan squeezed my hand. Then, we'll deal with that if it happens. For now, let's try to focus on positive things. I finished painting the clouds on the nursery ceiling today while you were napping. I leaned against his shoulder, grateful for his attempt to shift the conversation away from his mother. Did you remember to use the low VOC paint I bought? Of course. No toxic fumes for our little one. He rested his hand gently on my rounded belly, smiling as he felt a kick against his palm. Someone's active tonight. She's been doing gymnastics all day. I think she's running out of room in there. For a few peaceful moments, we sat together feeling our daughter's movements, the tension of the day temporarily forgotten. This was what mattered, I reminded myself. Not Diane's schemes or Jennifer's accusations, but our little family taking shape. The reprieve was short-lived. The next morning, I woke to find several missed calls from an unknown number on my phone. As I was debating whether to return the calls, a text message arrived from the same number. Mrs. Wright, this is Marcus Peterson, the photographer Mrs. Diane Wright hired for your newborn session on the 15th. I'm trying to confirm details for C. Hospital access. Please call at your earliest convenience. I showed the message to Nathan, who immediately called the photographer to explain, again, that we had not agreed to this arrangement and would not be attending the vow renewal. From Nathan's increasingly frustrated tone, it was clear that Marcus had been given quite a different story by Diane. No, my mother does not speak for us in these matters, Nathan was saying firmly. We appreciate your time, but we will not be requiring your services on the 15th or any other date. After ending the call, Nathan turned to me, his expression grim. He says Mom told him we were overjoyed with the plan and had given her full permission to make the arrangements on our behalf. That's a bold-faced lie, I said, anger rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. I know. Nathan's jaw was tight with barely contained fury. This has gone beyond meddling into outright deception. I need to talk to my father. Robert Wright had always been something of a cipher to me. Unlike his wife, who dominated every room she entered, Robert was quiet and reserved, often retreating to his home office during family gatherings. He'd always been polite to me, but never particularly warm. Nathan insisted his father's apparent detachment was simply his nature, not a reflection of his feelings toward me. Nathan arranged to meet his father for lunch that day, preferring to have this conversation away from Diane's influence. He returned looking drained but determined. "How did it go?" I asked hesitantly. "Better than I expected, actually," Nathan replied, loosening his tie. Dad was genuinely shocked when I told him about the photographer. He had no idea Mom had gone that far. "He believed you?" "He did. Apparently, Mom told him we had agreed to make a brief appearance at the ceremony with the baby. When I explained about your blood pressure issues and Dr. Chen's concerns, he seemed genuinely worried. Nathan sat beside me, taking my hand. He says he'll talk to Mom, try to make her understand that she needs to back off. I wanted to believe Robert's intervention would make a difference, but experience had taught me to be cautious. "Do you think she'll listen to him?" Nathan sighed. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Dad tends to avoid direct conflict with Mom, but he seemed pretty determined this time." The next day brought a delivery to our door, an enormous flower arrangement with a card that read simply, "Thinking of you. Love, Mom and Dad." No mention of the photographer incident, no acknowledgement of the ongoing tension, just flowers as if nothing had happened. Is this supposed to be an apology? I wondered aloud, eyeing the elaborate arrangement. Knowing my mother, it's more likely a peace offering meant to smooth things over without actually addressing the real issue, Nathan replied. But at least it's not another attempt to push the vow renewal. We were cautiously optimistic that perhaps Robert's intervention had made some impact. That hope lasted exactly 3 days, until Diane called Nathan with what she described as wonderful news. "The minister has agreed to perform a special blessing for the baby during the vow renewal ceremony," she announced. "We can do it whether you're there in person or joining by video call from the hospital. Isn't that thoughtful? Now your daughter will be included in this special family milestone even if she arrives on schedule." Nathan's patience, already stretched thin, finally snapped. "Mom, there will be no blessing, no video call, no connection whatsoever between your vow renewal and the birth of our child. I don't know how to make this any clearer to you. We will not be participating in any way." There was a moment of shocked silence before Diane's voice came back, trembling with emotion. "I don't understand why you're being so cruel about this, Nathan. All I wanted was to share my special day with my son and his family. Is that really so terrible? What's terrible is that you deliberately scheduled your special day on Emma's due date, then refused to change it when we pointed out the conflict. What's terrible is that you've spent weeks trying to manipulate and pressure us instead of respecting our decision. What's terrible is that you're adding unnecessary stress to Emma's pregnancy despite knowing about her health concerns." "That's not fair," Diane protested. "I've been nothing but supportive." "Supportive?" Nathan interrupted, his voice rising. "You sent your daughter to guilt-trip my pregnant wife. You hired a photographer without our knowledge or consent. You've been spreading misinformation to the entire family about our reasons for not attending. That's not support, Mom. That's manipulation." "I see Emma has thoroughly poisoned you against me," Diane said icily. "I never thought I'd see the day when my own son would speak to me this way." "This has nothing to do with Emma and everything to do with your behavior," Nathan retorted. "And until you can acknowledge that and offer a genuine apology, I think we need some space from you." After ending the call, Nathan sat heavily on the couch, looking exhausted and sad. "I shouldn't have lost my temper," he said quietly, "but I'm so tired of her refusing to listen." I sat beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. "You were clear and direct about boundaries that we've been trying to establish for weeks. That's not losing your temper. That's standing your ground." "She'll never see it that way," he sighed. In her mind, I've betrayed her, and it's all because of your influence. I know, I said softly. And I'm sorry you're caught in the middle. He turned to face me, his expression suddenly fierce. Don't apologize. You haven't done anything wrong. This is on her, not you. The next day brought the expected fallout. Jennifer called Nathan, distraught, saying Diane was devastated by his cruel rejection and had spent the night in tears. Various aunts and cousins from the Wright side began sending messages expressing their disappointment in our decision to boycott the vow renewal. Even Robert called, his normally calm voice tinged with frustration. Son, I understand your position, but your mother is inconsolable. Surely there's some compromise we can reach here. There isn't, Dad, Nathan replied firmly. We've tried to be reasonable, but Mom has pushed and manipulated at every turn. Emma's health and our baby's safe arrival have to come first. Of course they do, Robert agreed. But your mother feels like she's losing you. She's not losing me. She's experiencing the natural consequences of her own actions. Nathan's voice softened slightly. Dad, I love you both. But this pattern can't continue, especially once the baby arrives. We need Mom to respect our boundaries. After a long pause, Robert sighed. I understand. I'll talk to her again. The pressure continued to mount as the date drew nearer. With each passing day, my discomfort increased, not just from the physical strain of late pregnancy, but from the emotional weight of the ongoing conflict. At night, I would lie awake feeling the baby shift and turn, wondering how a day that should be filled with joy had become so fraught with tension. My 38-week appointment with Dr. Chen brought the concerns I'd been dreading. My blood pressure was significantly elevated, and tests revealed protein in my urine, early signs of preeclampsia, a potentially dangerous condition. I'm concerned, Emma, Dr. Chen said frankly, reviewing my chart. Your blood pressure is much higher than I'd like to see, and these other indicators suggest your condition is worsening despite medication and rest. What does that mean for the baby? I asked, trying to keep the fear from my voice. At this stage, the safest option might be to deliver soon. The baby is developed enough that the risks of early delivery are minimal compared to the risks of allowing your condition to progress. She looked up from her clipboard, her expression serious but kind. I'm recommending we schedule an induction for July 10th. Nathan, who had taken the day off work to accompany me to the appointment, squeezed my hand reassuringly. That's only 5 days away. Dr. Chen nodded. I know it's sooner than you expected, but I believe it's the safest course of action for both Emma and the baby. We'll start with a slow induction, which gives your body time to respond naturally. As we drove home from the appointment, I was quiet, processing the sudden change in plans. July 10th, I finally said. At least it resolves the vow renewal conflict. We'll have a 5-day-old by then. Nathan shot me a concerned look. You're not seriously thinking we'd attend with a newborn? No, of course not, I assured him. But you know that's exactly what your mother will suggest. I was right. When Nathan called his parents to inform them of the induction date, Diane's response was immediate and predictable. Oh, how perfect, she exclaimed, her voice bright with triumph. So you'll definitely be able to attend our renewal on the 15th. The baby will be 5 days old by then, just in time for her first family gathering. The audacity left me speechless, but Nathan was prepared. Mom, listen carefully. Emma will have just had major medical procedure. She'll be recovering. We'll have a newborn who shouldn't be exposed to crowds. We will not be attending your vow renewal, period. But the timing works out so perfectly now, Diane protested, and everyone will want to meet the baby. Everyone can meet her when we're ready for visitors, which won't be at your vow renewal, Nathan said firmly. This isn't up for discussion. The line went quiet for a moment before Diane spoke again, her voice now cold. I see you've made your choice. I hope you won't regret it. The call ended shortly after, with Nathan looking more resolved than ever. That's it, he said, turning to me. I'm done trying to reason with her. From now until after the baby arrives, we're focusing only on what matters. True to his word, Nathan implemented a new policy for dealing with his family's messages and calls. Any communication about the vow renewal went unanswered. Any other topics received brief, polite responses that didn't invite further discussion. It was like drawing a protective circle around our little family, keeping the drama at bay as we prepared for our daughter's arrival. The next few days passed in a blur of final preparations. We installed the car seat, packed and repacked the hospital bag, and made sure the nursery was fully stocked with diapers and onesies. With each completed task, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, not just about the impending birth, but about what kind of relationship our daughter would have with her grandmother. Do you think she'll ever change? I asked Nathan one night as we lay in bed, his hand resting protectively over my belly. Will she always be this controlling with our daughter? Nathan was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. I don't know, he finally admitted. Mom's always been set in her ways, but having a grandchild, it might change her perspective, or it might make her even more determined to control everything. That's what I'm afraid of, I whispered. I don't want our daughter growing up feeling like she's never good enough, or like her wishes don't matter unless they align with Diane's plans. They won't, Nathan promised, kissing my forehead, because we'll be different kinds of parents than she was. We'll teach our daughter that her voice matters, that healthy boundaries are important, and that love doesn't come with conditions. His words reassured me, and I drifted off to sleep feeling more peaceful than I had in weeks. No matter what happened with Diane, Nathan and I were united. We would protect our daughter and teach her what healthy relationships looked like. The morning of July 10th arrived with a surreal quality. As we drove to the hospital in the early dawn light, the streets empty and quiet, I felt a strange sense of calm. The weeks of tension with Diane seemed distant now, overshadowed by the imminent arrival of our daughter. We checked into Lakeside Memorial at 7 a.m., and the induction process began. Dr. Chen had explained that first inductions often progress slowly, especially for first-time mothers, but I was still unprepared for just how gradual the process would be. Hours passed with minimal changes, the contractions present but manageable. By evening, I was still in early labor. Dr. Chen assured us this was normal and suggested we try to rest as much as possible. First babies often take their time, she said with an encouraging smile. Your body is doing exactly what it should.
Probes and see during the mista and touching as she feel the creepy.
It was during this quiet time, as I breathed through increasingly intense contractions, that Nurse Jasmine came in with a suggestion that would unexpectedly change everything. Nurse Jasmine's suggestion about the Family Connect program lingered in my mind as the night progressed. Between contractions, I found myself considering the possibilities it presented. The secure live streaming service was meant to keep families connected during extended hospital stays, but I was beginning to see it as something else entirely, a potential solution to the weeks-long power struggle with Diane. What exactly does the live stream show? I asked Jasmine when she returned to check my vitals. It's completely customizable, she explained, adjusting the fetal monitor. Some mothers only want to stream the baby's first moments after birth. Others share parts of labor with distant family members. The camera stays positioned where you want it, and you control when the stream is active. Nathan, who had been dozing in the recliner beside my bed, stirred at our conversation. And it's secure? Private? Jasmine nodded. Absolutely. Only people with the password-protected link can access it, and you can change that password at any time. As another contraction built, I focused on my breathing, letting the idea take shape in my mind. When the pain subsided, I turned to Nathan. "I think we should do it." He looked surprised. "Really? After everything with my mother?" "Not for her," I clarified. "For us, and maybe, in a way, for her too." The night deepened as my labor progressed. Through its slow, steady rhythm. Between contractions, Nathan and I discussed the live streaming option, weighing the pros and cons of bringing Diane, even virtually, into this intimate space. "She's going to hold this against us for years," I said, shifting uncomfortably in the hospital bed. "Missing her vow renewal for the birth will become another grievance in her collection, something she'll bring up at every holiday and family gathering." Nathan sighed, gently massaging my shoulders. "Probably. That's her pattern." "But what if we flip the script?" I suggested, an idea forming more clearly now. "What if, instead of keeping her out, we invite her in, on our terms?" Nathan's hands paused. "What exactly are you thinking?" "The live stream. We could send the link to both our families, including your parents. Make it clear that this is our way of including them in this special moment, even though they can't be here in person." A slow smile spread across Nathan's face as he understood. So instead of us missing her event, she'd be choosing to miss our moment if she doesn't watch. "Exactly," I said, grimacing as another contraction began. "It's not about manipulation. It's about offering genuine inclusion while maintaining our boundaries." When the contraction passed, Nathan kissed my forehead. "It's a generous offer, considering how she's behaved. Are you sure you're comfortable sharing this experience with her, even virtually?" I considered the question seriously. The birth of our daughter was an intensely personal event, one I'd originally imagined sharing only with Nathan. But families were complicated. Boundaries were necessary but not impenetrable, and sometimes the most powerful response to control was not rejection, but thoughtful inclusion. "Yes," I decided. "But we set the terms. We control when the stream is active and what it shows. And we make it clear this isn't a substitute for the vow renewal. It's a separate, equally important event that deserves its own focus." By morning, my labor had progressed to the point where conversation became difficult. The contractions were coming closer together, each one requiring my complete concentration. Dr. Chen arrived for her morning rounds, checked my progress, and delivered unexpected news. "You're at 6 centimeters, which is good progress," she said. "But I'm concerned about the baby's position. She's showing signs of distress during contractions, and your blood pressure is continuing to climb despite medication." My heart raced, with sudden fear. "Is she okay?" Dr. Chen's expression was calm but serious. "She's stable for now, but I believe a C-section would be the safest option for both of you. We can have you in the operating room within the hour." Nathan squeezed my hand, his face pale but composed. "Whatever is safest for Emma and the baby." As the medical team prepared me for surgery, the emotional roller coaster of the past weeks seemed to fade into the background. The petty power struggles with Diane, the arguments over dates and ceremonies, none of it mattered now. All that mattered was bringing our daughter safely into the world. Just before they wheeled me to the operating room, Nathan remembered the live stream. "Should I set it up now? Let our families know what's happening?" Despite my anxiety about the surgery, I nodded. "Do it. Send the link to everyone, your parents, my parents, our siblings." While a nurse helped me into a surgical gown, Nathan quickly set up the Family Connect system with Jasmine's help. They positioned the camera discreetly in the corner of the room, where it would capture the moment our daughter was first placed in my arms without intruding on the medical procedures. "I'm sending a group message to both our families," Nathan said, his phone in hand. "Letting them know you're heading into surgery and that we'll activate the stream once the baby arrives." I nodded, too focused on the impending surgery to worry about who would or wouldn't watch. As they administered the spinal anesthesia and helped me onto the operating table, my thoughts were entirely with the tiny life about to enter the world. The operating room was brightly lit and filled with efficient activity. Dr. Chen's calm voice guided her team as Nathan, now dressed in scrubs, was allowed to sit beside my head. A blue surgical drape was raised at my chest, blocking my view of the procedure. "You'll feel some pressure, but no pain," Dr. Chen explained as she began. True to her word, I felt strange sensations of pressure and movement, but no pain as she worked. Nathan held my hand tightly, his eyes never leaving my face. "You're doing great," he whispered. "Almost there." Then suddenly, at 10:17 a.m. on July 12th, a strong, indignant cry filled the operating room. "Here she is," Dr. Chen announced. "A beautiful baby girl." The nurse briefly raised our daughter above the surgical drape so I could see her, red-faced, squirming and perfect. Tears blurred my vision as they took her to the warmer for initial assessments. "Nathan," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "The stream." He fumbled with his phone, activating the live feed just as the nurses finished their assessments and wrapped our daughter in a blanket. Nathan was allowed to hold her first, bringing her to me so I could see her properly as Dr. Chen finished. "The surgery." "She's perfect," I whispered, reaching up a shaky hand to touch her cheek. "Absolutely perfect." Nathan angled himself so the camera could capture our daughter's face. "Everyone," he said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "We'd like you to meet Lily Grace Wright, 7 pounds, 8 ounces, 20 inches long, and absolutely perfect." I looked toward the camera, suddenly aware of the invisible audience that might be watching. "Hello, everyone. We wish you could all be here, but we're glad we can share this moment with you." Nathan leaned down to kiss my forehead, then addressed the camera again. "Mom, Dad, we hope you're watching. We can't wait for you to meet your granddaughter in person." In the recovery room, as the anesthesia began to wear off and Lily dozed in a bassinet beside my bed, Nathan checked his phone for responses to the live stream. My parents had sent a flurry of joyful messages, as had my sister Sarah and several friends. Nathan's cousins and some of his father's siblings had sent congratulations too. But from Diane and Robert, there was only silence. "Do you think they watched?" I asked, my voice hoarse from the breathing tube that had been placed during surgery. Nathan shrugged, trying to mask his disappointment. "I don't know. Dad usually responds quickly to messages. Maybe they were busy with vow renewal preparations," I suggested, though we both knew that 3 days before the event, most of the major arrangements would already be settled. "Maybe," Nathan agreed, though his tone suggested he didn't believe. As the hours passed and I began to recover from the surgery, the silence from the right side of the family became increasingly notable. By evening, we'd received congratulations from distant cousins I'd only met once or twice, but nothing from Nathan's parents or sister. "Should I call them?" Nathan wondered aloud as he helped me adjust my position in the hospital bed. I was about to respond when his phone rang. The screen displayed Dad calling. Nathan answered immediately, putting the phone on speaker. "Dad, hi." "Nathan." Robert's voice was thick with emotion. "She's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." Relief washed over Nathan's face. "You saw the stream?" "We did." There was a pause. "Son, I need to tell you something. We're canceling the vow renewal." Nathan's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "What? Why?" "Because some things are more important," Robert said simply. "Seeing my granddaughter born today. It put things in perspective. Your mother and I had a long talk last night and again after watching the stream." "Is Mom okay with canceling?" Nathan asked cautiously. Robert sighed. "She's coming to terms with it. Seeing Lily, seeing the two of you as parents, it affected her more than she expected. She's struggling to admit she was wrong, but deep down, I think she knows it. I appreciate that, Dad. We'd like to come meet our granddaughter tomorrow, if that's all right with you and Emma, and maybe we can plan a small renewal ceremony later in the year when all of us can attend. After the call ended, Nathan and I exchanged looks of cautious optimism. That was unexpected, I said. Completely, Nathan agreed. Dad sounded different, more assertive than usual when it comes to Mom. The power of grandchildren, I suggested with a tired smile. Maybe seeing Lily made them both realize what really matters. Nathan nodded, though I could see the wariness in his eyes. We'd both been down this road before, hopeful that Diane had turned a corner, only to be disappointed when her controlling behavior resumed in new ways. Let's take it one step at a time, I said, reaching for his hand. They're canceling the vow renewal, which is huge, and they want to meet Lily. That's progress. You're right, Nathan agreed, squeezing my hand. And whatever happens with them, we have our daughter. That's what matters most. The next day was a blur of medical checks, first attempts at breastfeeding, and adjusting to the reality of having a tiny human who depended on us completely. By afternoon, I was exhausted but determined to look somewhat presentable for the impending visit from the Wrights. You don't need to impress them, Nathan reminded me as I asked him to bring my cosmetics bag from our hospital suitcase. You just had major surgery. I know, I said, wincing as I shifted position. But your mother notices everything. I'd rather not give her ammunition about how haggard I look. Nathan frowned. You're beautiful. You just brought our daughter into the world. Anyone who can't see that beauty isn't worth impressing. Before I could respond, there was a gentle knock at the door. Robert entered first, carrying an enormous bouquet of pink and white flowers. Diane followed a step behind, her expression unreadable. May we come in? Robert asked, his voice gentle. Of course, Nathan said, rising to greet them. Robert set the flowers aside to embrace his son, then approached my bed with a warm smile. Emma, how are you feeling? Sore but happy, I replied honestly. Thank you for the flowers. They're beautiful. Not as beautiful as our granddaughter, Robert said, his gaze shifting to the bassinet where Lily was sleeping. May I? Nathan nodded, carefully lifting Lily and placing her in her grandfather's arms. Robert's face transformed, with wonder as he looked down at her. Hello, little one, he whispered. I'm your grandpa. Diane had remained near the door, watching the scene unfold with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. When Robert finally looked up from the baby, he seemed to notice his wife's hesitation. Diane, he said gently, come meet our granddaughter. She approached slowly, her usual confidence noticeably absent. As Robert carefully transferred Lily to her arms, I saw something I'd never witnessed before. Diane Wright, momentarily vulnerable, her carefully constructed facade cracking as she gazed at her granddaughter's face. She has the right eyes, Diane said softly, almost to herself. But your nose, I think, she added, glancing at me. It wasn't an apology or even an acknowledgement of the weeks of tension, but it was something, a small recognition of my contribution to this new life, a tentative bridge across the chasm that had widened between us. That's what I thought too, I replied, matching her tone. Nathan's chin, though. Diane nodded, still studying Lily's face. Robert's chin, actually. It's a family trait. The visit continued in this careful, measured way. We discussed the delivery, Lily's measurements, and the basics of my recovery. Diane offered surprisingly practical advice about C-section healing, revealing that Jennifer had been born via emergency cesarean, a detail Nathan hadn't known. When they prepared to leave an hour later, Robert kissed Lily's forehead and promised to return the next day. Diane hesitated, then addressed me directly for one of the few times during the visit. "We've postponed the vow renewal," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Robert feels, and I agree, that family should come first right now." It wasn't quite the admission I'd hoped for, but it was more than I'd expected. "I appreciate that," I said sincerely. "We'd love for Lily to be part of that celebration when the time is right." Something flickered in Diane's eyes. Surprise, perhaps at my willingness to include her event in our future plans. "Yes," she said after a moment. "That would be nice." After they left, Nathan exhaled heavily, dropping into the chair beside my bed. "Well, that was better than expected," I suggested. "Mom didn't criticize anything. Not the hospital. Not the bassinet setup. Not even your hairstyle. I think that's a first." I laughed softly. Baby steps. Literally. Over the next few days in the hospital, we settled into a cautious new dynamic with the Wrights. Robert visited daily, bringing coffee for Nathan and magazines for me. Diane came less frequently and stayed for shorter periods. But when she did visit, she was noticeably subdued. No unsolicited advice, no thinly veiled criticisms, just brief periods of holding Lily and occasional questions about our plans for returning home. On the day of our discharge, Dr. Chen gave final instructions for my recovery and Lily's care before sending us on our way. As Nathan helped me into the wheelchair that would take me to the hospital entrance, a procedure I protested was unnecessary, until he reminded me I'd had major surgery 5 days earlier. My phone chimed with a text from Diane. "We've cleared the guest room for your mother to stay with you this first week home, as you mentioned she planned to do. Let us know if you need anything else." I showed the message to Nathan, who looked as surprised as I felt. Not only had Diane remembered my mother was coming to help, but she had acknowledged it without complaint or competing offers of assistance. "Is this real?" Nathan wondered. "Or are we in some alternate universe where my mother respects boundaries?" "Let's not question it too much," I suggested. "Just appreciate it while it lasts." My mother was waiting at our house when we arrived, having flown in that morning. She had already prepared a light meal and set up a comfortable recovery area for me in the living room. As Nathan carried Lily inside in her car seat, I saw our home with new eyes. No longer just the place where we lived, but the place where our daughter would grow up. The first week at home passed in a blur of nighttime feedings, diaper changes, and adjusting to our new reality. My mother's presence was a godsend, handling household tasks and cooking meals while Nathan and I focused on Lily and my recovery. True to their word, the Wrights kept their distance, calling occasionally, but not visiting until Robert texted to ask if they could stop by briefly on Sunday afternoon. "Are you up for it?" Nathan asked me. "We can say it's too soon if you're not feeling ready." I considered the question honestly. My incision was healing well, and while I was still tired, the fog of those first post-surgery days had lifted. "I think it's fine. Short visit, though." When Sunday arrived, I was surprised to see Diane carrying a large covered dish when she and Robert came through the door. "Lasagna," she explained, heading straight for the kitchen. "And a salad. I thought you might be tired of takeout by now." It was such a practical, thoughtful gesture that I was momentarily speechless. "Thank you," I managed finally. "That's very kind." "It's nothing," she said with a dismissive wave. "Just a meal." But we both knew it was more than that. It was an olive branch, offered without fanfare or expectation of praise. The visit was brief, as promised. Robert held Lily, marveling at how much she'd changed in just a few days. Diane kept her distance until I surprised myself by asking if she'd like to hold the baby. "If you're sure," she said, an unusual hesitancy in her voice. "Of course," I replied, carefully transferring Lily to her arms. As Diane cradled our daughter, I noticed something shift in her expression. A softening around the eyes, a genuine smile replacing her usual calculated one. She's alert, Diane commented, taking everything in. Like her father, I said. Nathan was always watching everything, even as a baby, Diane agreed, her gaze still on Lily. Always curious, never wanted to sleep because he might miss something. It was the first time she'd shared a memory of Nathan's infancy with me, and I treasured the glimpse into his early life. That explains a lot about why he's so detail-oriented now. The moment passed quickly, but it felt significant. A small connection based on genuine shared interest rather than obligation or manipulation. As the weeks progressed, we established a new, cautious relationship with the Wrights. Diane's visits remained brief and were always scheduled in advance, a boundary she now respected without protest. Her suggestions about baby care were offered, more tentatively, often prefaced with, "You probably already know this, but..." When I clearly stated my preference for a different approach, she, mostly, accepted it without argument. The most surprising change came in late September, when Robert called to discuss the rescheduled vow renewal. "We're thinking October 20th, he said. "Lily will be a little over 3 months by then. Would that work for your family?" The fact that he referred to us as a family unit, separate from but connected to theirs, was not lost on me. "Let me check. With Nathan, but I think that should be fine," I replied. "Lily will still be pretty young, but as long as we can step out if she gets fussy, I think we can make it work." "Of course," Robert assured me. "We want all of you to be comfortable. It's going to be much smaller than originally planned, just close family and a few friends at the country club." When I relayed the conversation to Nathan, he looked thoughtful. "Dad mentioned the new date to me yesterday, too. He also said something interesting, that Mom has been talking to a therapist." "Really?" I couldn't hide my surprise. Diane had always dismissed therapy as unnecessary navel-gazing. Nathan nodded. Apparently watching Lily's birth on the live stream affected her more than we realized. Dad said she kept replaying it, watching how exhausted but determined you looked, how carefully the medical team worked. She told him she realized she could have caused real harm with all the stress she created. I wasn't entirely convinced of Diane's sudden self-awareness, but I was willing to acknowledge that something had shifted. Well, therapy can only help. The rescheduled vow renewal in October was a stark contrast to the elaborate event Diane had originally planned. Held in a small private room at Willow Creek Country Club, it featured simple decorations, a brief ceremony led by their longtime minister, and a relaxed luncheon afterward. Most notably, Diane had arranged for a quiet room adjacent to the main space, equipped with comfortable seating and a changing table for Lily. During the ceremony, I was touched to see both Diane and Robert turn to include Lily in their renewed vows. "And to our granddaughter," Diane added, her voice softening, "we promise to respect your parents' boundaries and always put family harmony above personal desires." The words seemed to be directed as much to Nathan and me as to Lily, who was, of course, more interested in the ceiling fan than her grandparents' promises. But the message was clear. Diane was acknowledging her behavior and, at least publicly, committing to change. After the ceremony, as guests mingled during the luncheon, Diane approached me as I sat feeding Lily in the quiet room. For a moment, she simply watched us, an unreadable expression on her face. "Thank you for coming today," she said finally. "It meant a lot to both of us." "We're glad we could be here," I replied sincerely. "It was a beautiful ceremony." Diane nodded, then surprised me by sitting down beside us. "I owe you an apology, Emma." Her voice was quiet but steady. "My behavior before Lily's birth was inexcusable. I convinced myself I was protecting my son and family traditions, but really, I was just trying to control everything, as usual." I was momentarily speechless, never having expected such a direct acknowledgement from her. "I appreciate you saying that," I managed finally. "Watching Lily being born, even just on a screen." She paused, seeming to search for the right word. "It changed something in me," made me realize what truly matters. Robert has been telling me for years that I'm too controlling, but I never really heard him until that moment. I studied her face, looking for signs of the calculation I'd grown accustomed to, but found only a tired sincerity. It took courage. To cancel the original renewal, I acknowledged, especially after all the planning you'd done. It wasn't courage, she said, with a small, self-deprecating smile. It was finally recognizing my own selfishness. When I saw you in that hospital bed, after major surgery, still thinking to include us in that moment, despite how I'd behaved. She shook her head. It was humbling. As Lily finished feeding, I adjusted my clothing and lifted her to my shoulder for burping. Diane watched with a wistful expression. "May I?" she asked, holding out her arms. I hesitated only briefly before transferring Lily to her grandmother. "Support her head," I said automatically, then smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, habit." "No, you're right to remind me," Diane said, carefully positioning Lily against her shoulder. "You're her mother. You know what's best for her." The simple acknowledgement of my role and authority meant more than any elaborate apology could have. As Diane gently patted Lily's back, coaxing a surprisingly loud burp from such a tiny body, we both laughed. "That's definitely a Wright trait," Diane said. "Nathan could break windows with his burps as a baby." "I'm learning so many interesting things about my husband today," I teased, feeling an unfamiliar ease in her presence. "I have photo albums," Diane confided with a conspiratorial smile. "The embarrassing kind that mothers keep specifically to humble their grown children." "I'd love to see those sometime," I said, and meant it. As Lily grows, I remain watchful of Diane's tendency toward control. Our relationship may never be uncomplicated or entirely warm, but we've reached an understanding based on mutual respect for our roles in Nathan and Lily's lives. Boundaries are still necessary, but they're no longer battlegrounds, just clear guidelines that help us navigate our complex family dynamics. Sometimes, in those rare moments when old patterns begin to emerge and Diane starts to overstep, I gently mention how meaningful the hospital live stream was, a subtle reminder of the lesson we all learned through that experience. True family. Celebrations include everyone, not just those who follow the script you've written for them. The most powerful response to manipulation isn't always confrontation. Sometimes it's compassion, opening yourself to connection even when past experience suggests self-protection. By including Diane in our most vulnerable moment rather than shutting her out, we gave her the opportunity to choose connection over control. The fact that she eventually took that opportunity gives me hope for our future as an extended family, complex and imperfect, but ultimately bound by love for the next generation. 3 months after Lily's birth, life had settled into a new rhythm. The sleepless nights were gradually giving way to longer stretches of rest, and I was finally feeling more like myself after the physical recovery from the C-section. Nathan had returned to work after taking 4 weeks of paternity leave, though he still rushed home each evening, eager to spend time with Lily before her bedtime. The rescheduled vow renewal was approaching quickly. Despite Diane's newfound restraint, I still felt a flutter of anxiety whenever I thought about attending the ceremony with Lily. Would the old Diane resurface in a public setting? Would she try to take over, positioning herself as the center of attention even with a 3-month-old grandchild present? "You're overthinking it," Nathan said gently when I voiced these concerns as we got ready for bed one night. "Mom's been different since Lily was born. Even Jennifer's noticed." That was true. Jennifer had sheepishly apologized for her pre-birth visit during one of her first times meeting Lily. "Mom had me convinced you were deliberately trying to ruin her special day," she'd admitted. "I didn't realize she'd chosen your due date on purpose." I sighed, folding laundry as Nathan checked on Lily in her crib. "I know your mom's been making an effort. I just can't help feeling like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." Nathan returned to our bedroom, baby monitor in hand. I get it. Trust takes time to rebuild. But remember, we're in control here. If Mom starts overstepping at the renewal, we can always leave early. The day before the vow renewal, Diane called with what she described as a small request. My guard immediately went up, but I kept my tone neutral as I answered, "What can I help with?" "I was wondering if you'd be willing to take a few family photos before the ceremony tomorrow," she said. "Just you, Nathan, Lily, Robert, and myself." Marcus, you remember, the photographer, suggested it would be nice to have some four-generation pictures. I paused, waiting for the catch. When none came, I replied cautiously, "That should be fine. What time were you thinking?" "Whatever works best with Lily's schedule," Diane said, surprising me further. "We know babies have their own timetables. We could do early morning if she's usually at her best then, or right before the ceremony if that's better." The consideration for Lily's needs rather than her own preferences was so unlike the old Diane that I momentarily wondered if I was speaking to an imposter. "Morning would probably be better," I said. "She's usually pretty happy after her first feed, around 9 a.m. "Perfect," Diane replied. "And Emma? Thank you. I know things haven't always been easy between us, but having all of you there tomorrow means a great deal to Robert and me." After we hung up, I stared at my phone in bewilderment. Nathan found me in the same position several minutes later. "Everything okay?" he asked, concerned. "Your mother just thanked me and acknowledged that things haven't always been easy between us," I said. "And she asked about family photos in a way that prioritized Lily's schedule over hers." Nathan raised his eyebrows. "The therapy must be working." "Apparently so," I agreed, still marveling at the interaction. When we arrived at Willow Creek Country Club the next morning, I was struck by how different the venue looked compared to what Diane had originally planned. Gone were the elaborate floral installations and custom lighting she'd described. Instead, the small private dining room was decorated with simple elegance, soft ivory linens, modest flower arrangements, and framed family photos placed thoughtfully around the room. Marcus, the photographer, greeted us warmly. "Mrs. Wright mentioned you're working around the baby's schedule, so we can start whenever you're ready," he said, setting up his equipment with practiced efficiency. I glanced around for Diane, half expecting her to appear and contradict these accommodating arrangements. Instead, Robert approached, his face lighting up at the sight of Lily in her carrier. "There's my girl," he cooed, bending down to greet his granddaughter. "And don't you look beautiful today?" he added, straightening to kiss my cheek. "Both of you ladies are stunning." "Thank you, Robert," I replied, genuinely touched by his warm greeting. "Where's Diane?" "Getting her final makeup touches," he said with a fond smile. "She's more nervous about today than she'll admit. Having a smaller ceremony, focusing on what truly matters, it's new territory for her." Before I could respond, Diane appeared, wearing an elegant champagne-colored dress that was notably understated compared to her usual style. For a moment, she stood in the doorway, taking in the sight of her family gathered together. Then, with a visible deep breath, she approached. "You came," she said simply, and I was startled to see the sheen of tears in her eyes. "Of course we did," Nathan replied, embracing his mother. "We wouldn't miss it." Diane turned to me, her gaze falling on Lily, who was now awake and observing the room with curious eyes. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the baby. "Of course," I said, lifting Lily from her carrier. As I transferred her to Diane's arms, I noticed how carefully she supported Lily's head, adjusting her hold to make sure the baby was secure and comfortable. "Hello, precious girl," Diane whispered, her usual composure softening as Lily grabbed at her necklace with tiny, determined fingers. "Careful with Grandma's pearls," she laughed, gently disentangling Lily's grip. The sound of her genuine laughter, not. The calculated social chuckle I'd grown accustomed to was refreshing. Marcus captured the moment beautifully, the first of many candid shots that would end up being far more treasured than any posed portrait. As we moved through various family groupings for the photos, I was struck by how natural Diane seemed, how present in the moment rather than focusing on appearances. When it came time for the ceremony, we took our seats in the front row. Lily, now fed and changed, dozed peacefully in my arms as the minister began the service. Diane and Robert stood together before their small gathering of loved ones, renewing the vows they'd made 30 years earlier. 3 decades ago, Robert began, his voice steady and sure. I promised to love you through all of life's changes. I could never have imagined the journey we'd take together, the joys, the challenges, the growth. Today, I renew that promise with an even deeper understanding of what it means to love through all seasons. Diane's voice trembled slightly as she responded, Robert, you have been my strength when I couldn't find my own. You've patiently shown me what truly matters in life. She paused, and her gaze briefly found mine in the audience. Recent months have taught me the importance of family over formality, of connection over control. I promise to carry these lessons forward as we continue our journey together. I felt a lump form in my throat at the unexpected reference. Nathan squeezed my hand, his own eyes suspiciously bright. As the ceremony continued, I found myself genuinely moved by the evident love between Diane and Robert. A deeper, more mature love than I'd previously recognized beneath Diane's carefully maintained social veneer. When the minister invited them to exchange new rings as symbols of their renewed commitment, Diane surprised everyone with an unplanned addition to the ceremony. Before we exchange rings, she said, turning toward us, Robert and I would like to make a special promise to our granddaughter. The minister, clearly not expecting this deviation, hesitated before nodding his approval. Diane approached us, kneeling carefully despite her formal attire to be at eye level with the now awake Lily in my arms. Lily Grace, she said softly, as your grandparents, we promise to honor your parents' wisdom in raising you. We promise to respect the boundaries they set, knowing they come from love. We promise to support your family without trying to control it, and to cherish every moment we're blessed to be part of your life. Robert joined her, adding, we promise to share our family's stories and traditions with you while helping you create your own, and we promise that our home will always be a place of unconditional love for you. I blinked back tears as Diane gently touched Lily's cheek before returning to complete the ceremony. The public nature of their promises, made, not just to Lily, but before all their friends and family, felt like a profound shift in our family dynamic. During the luncheon that followed, several guests commented on the touching addition to the ceremony. That was beautiful, Diane, said an elegant older woman I recognized as one of her longtime friends. Such a meaningful way to include your granddaughter. It felt important, Diane replied with a glance toward me. Some promises need to be spoken aloud to be fully realized. Later, as Nathan and I prepared to leave with an increasingly tired Lily, Diane approached us privately. Thank you for being here today, she said. It meant everything to have our family complete. It was a beautiful ceremony, I replied sincerely. Those promises to Lily. I hesitated, searching for the right words. That was unexpected, but very meaningful. Diane nodded, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months. A lot of talking, too, in therapy. She smiled wryly. Robert never thought he'd see the day I'd willingly discuss my feelings with a stranger, but here we are. It seems to be helping, Nathan observed carefully. It is, Diane acknowledged. I've come to realize how my need for control has affected those around me, especially you, Nathan. She turned to me. And Emma, I owe you an apology for how I behaved before Lily was born. The way I deliberately scheduled the renewal on your due date. The pressure I put on both of you. It was manipulative and wrong. The direct acknowledgement took me aback. In all the years I'd known Diane, I'd never heard her admit fault so plainly. I appreciate that, I said, finding I truly meant it. Watching Lily's birth, even just through that hospital live stream. Diane shook her head, emotion flickering across her face. It changed something in me. Made me see how petty my concerns were compared to what you were going through. Nathan put his arm around me, Lily sleeping against his shoulder. "We're glad you watched," he said. "That was Emma's idea, you know." Diane's gaze met mine, a new respect evident in her eyes. It was a generous offer, considering how I'd behaved. I've thought about that a lot. How you chose inclusion when you had every right to shut me out. As we said our goodbyes, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't fully acknowledged was there. The constant vigilance, the anticipation of Diane's next manipulation, the energy spent maintaining defenses, all of it had taken a toll that was only apparent now as it began to ease. In the weeks that followed the vow renewal, our interactions with Diane continued to evolve. She still visited, but always called first to ask if the timing was convenient. She still offered suggestions about baby care, but prefaced them with, "You probably already know this," or "This worked for me, but every baby is different." When I gently declined her advice, she accepted it without the passive-aggressive sighs, or later attempts to circumvent my decisions that had once been her hallmark. One afternoon in late November, as Thanksgiving approached, Diane called with what she emphasized was just a suggestion, not an expectation. "Robert and I were thinking about hosting Thanksgiving this year," she said. "Nothing elaborate, just family. But of course, we understand if you'd prefer to celebrate at your place or with Emma's family." The lack of pressure was so refreshing that I found myself surprisingly open to the idea. "Let me talk it over with Nathan," I replied. "Lily will be almost 4 months old by then, so travel should be manageable. But I'd want to keep it low-key. She still gets overwhelmed with too much stimulation." "Of course," Diane agreed readily. "We could set up the guest room for naps, keep the gathering small. Whatever works best for all of you." When I mentioned the conversation to Nathan that evening, he looked cautiously optimistic. "Mom hosting Thanksgiving but actually considering what works for us? That's new territory." "I know," I agreed, watching him gently rock Lily as she fought sleep. "I'm still getting used to this version of your mother." "Do you want to go?" he asked. "We could always do Thanksgiving with your family instead." I considered the question seriously. My parents had already visited twice since Lily's birth and were planning to come for Christmas. Thanksgiving at the Wrights would be our first holiday as a family in their home, a test of sorts for the new dynamic we were building. "I think we should go," I decided. "Your mom is making an effort. We should meet her halfway." Nathan smiled, leaning over to kiss me as Lily finally surrendered to sleep in his arms. "I love you for that, for being willing to try." Thanksgiving at the Wright home was indeed a revelation. Diane had scaled back her usual elaborate decorations and formal place settings in favor of a more relaxed atmosphere. When we arrived, I was surprised to find the dining room table already set with the good china, but missing the intimidating array of silverware that had always made me anxious during previous formal meals. "I thought we'd keep it simple this year," Diane explained. When she noticed my surprised glance, "Family-style serving. Just one set of utensils. Less to wash afterward." The meal itself was delicious, but noticeably less extravagant than Diane's usual multi-course productions. When I commented on a particularly good sweet potato dish, Diane smiled. "It's your mother's recipe, actually. I called her last week to ask for it." The casual mention of contacting my mother, something the old Diane would never have done, was yet another sign of change. Throughout the meal, she was attentive but not overbearing, offering to hold Lily when I needed to eat, but returning her without protest when she began fussing. After dinner, as Nathan helped his father clear the table, Diane surprised me by suggesting we take Lily for a walk in the garden. "The fresh air might help her settle," she said, "and it's not too cold today." As we strolled through Robert's meticulously maintained garden, Lily bundled against the November chill in my arms. Diane was quiet for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what I want my relationship with Lily to be like as she grows up," she said. "The kind of grandmother I want to be." "What conclusions have you reached?" I asked, genuinely curious. Diane smiled ruefully. "That I want to be very different from my own grandmother, for starters. She was a formidable woman, always correct, always proper, but never warm. I never felt I could truly be myself around her." I was surprised by this glimpse into Diane's childhood. She rarely spoke about her upbringing. "I didn't know that about your grandmother." "There's a lot I haven't shared," Diane acknowledged. "My therapist says that's part of the problem. I keep everything behind this perfect facade, even from family." She glanced down at Lily, who was watching a few late-season leaves dance across the path. "I don't want Lily to feel she has to be perfect around me. I want her to know she's loved exactly as she is." The simple sincerity of the statement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "That's what every child needs," I said softly. "It's what I needed and didn't get," Diane admitted. "My parents were like my grandmother. Appearances were everything. Emotions were messy and therefore discouraged." Suddenly, so much about Diane made sense. Her rigid control, her focus on social standing, her difficulty accepting anything that deviated from her carefully constructed image of the perfect family. "That must have been difficult," I said. Diane nodded. It was all I knew, and I carried it forward without questioning, imposing those same expectations on Nathan and Jennifer. She sighed. "It's taken me 60 years and a granddaughter to realize there's another way to be." We continued walking in companionable silence, Lily occasionally making delighted sounds at passing birds or the rustle of branches. As we rounded the corner toward the house, Diane spoke again. "I want to thank you, Emma." "For what?" "For not giving up on me," she said simply. "For being willing to give me another chance with Lily, despite how I treated you. For that hospital live stream." Her voice caught slightly. "You could have shut me out completely, and no one would have blamed you. Instead, you offered connection." I adjusted Lily in my arms, considering my response carefully. "I believe in second chances," I said finally. "And family is worth the effort, even when it's complicated." Diane stopped walking, turning to face me directly. "I want you to know that I see how good you are for Nathan, how happy you make him, and you're a wonderful mother to Lily." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm sorry it took me so long to acknowledge that." The sincere apology, offered without qualifications or expectations, felt like the final piece falling into place in our reconstructed relationship. "Thank you, Diane," I said softly. "That means a lot to me." As we returned to the house, finding Nathan and Robert playing an impromptu game of chess in the living room, I felt a new sense of possibility. The future stretched before us. Holidays, birthdays, ordinary family gatherings, no longer minefields to be navigated, but opportunities to strengthen the fragile new understanding we were building. That evening, as we prepared to head home, with a drowsy Lily, Diane pressed a small package into my hands. "Just a little something," she said. "Open it when you get home." Later, after we'd settled Lily in her crib and collapsed onto our couch, I remembered the package. Unwrapping it carefully, I found a silver picture frame containing a photo from the Vow Renewal, not one of the formal portraits, but a candid moment captured by Marcus. In it, I was looking down at Lily in my arms, Nathan beside me with his arm around my shoulders, both of us oblivious to the camera. The simple inscription on the frame read, "Family is love's greatest gift." "That's new," Nathan commented, examining the frame. "Mom usually goes for the formal portraits." "Everything's changing," I replied, leaning against his shoulder with a contented sigh. "Including your mother." As Lily grew from infant to more mobile baby, Diane continued to surprise us with her evolution. When Lily began crawling at 7 months, Diane arrived for a visit with a bag of safety equipment for their home. "I thought we could child-proof the main areas where Lily plays when you visit," she explained. "That way you won't have to worry so much." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, acknowledging that Lily's safety was more important than her pristine decor, spoke volumes about Diane's continuing transformation. When I thanked her, she shrugged with uncharacteristic humility. "I've been reading some books about modern grandparenting. Apparently, it's not all about spoiling them with sugar and sending them home." By Lily's first birthday, the dynamic between Diane and me had shifted so dramatically that we found ourselves collaborating on the party planning without conflict. When I suggested a simple celebration at our home, rather than the elaborate event I knew Diane had envisioned, she readily agreed. "It's your home, your daughter, your decision," she said. "Just tell me what I can contribute." On the day of the party, Diane arrived early to help with decorations, wearing jeans and a casual sweater instead of her usual formal attire. As we hung streamers and arranged food, she shared stories about Nathan's first birthday that I'd never heard before. "He was absolutely fascinated with the cake," she recalled, laughing. "Not to eat it, to investigate it. He poked it with one finger, studied the frosting intently, then methodically dismantled the entire thing piece by piece. Never ate a bite, just wanted to understand its construction." "That sounds exactly like him," I chuckled, picturing Nathan's analytical approach evident even at 1-year-old. "He still examines every new food before tasting it." "Some things never change," Diane agreed warmly. As guests began to arrive, a small gathering of family and close friends, I watched Diane interact with my parents with genuine warmth, making sure they felt welcome and included. The territorial behavior that had marked early family gatherings was notably absent, replaced by a gracious inclusivity that put everyone at ease. When the time came for Lily's cake, Diane positioned herself to capture photos, but kept a respectful distance, allowing Nathan and me to guide Lily through her first encounter with birthday cake without interference. When Lily smashed frosting into her hair and face with delighted abandon, Diane laughed along with everyone else, not a hint of concern for the mess visible on her face. Later, as the party wound down and Lily napped, exhausted from the excitement, Diane helped me clean up the kitchen. Working side by side, we fell into an easy rhythm that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. "She's such a joy," Diane commented, carefully wrapping leftover cake. "So curious and determined." "Like her grandmother," I replied, then clarified, with a smile, "The determination part, at least." Diane laughed, accepting the comparison with good humor. "Let's hope she uses that determination more wisely than I have at times." As she prepared to leave that evening, Diane hugged me, a genuine embrace rather than the formal air kiss that had once been her standard greeting. "Thank you for letting me be part of her life," she said softly. "And yours." "We're family," I replied simply. "That hasn't changed." "No," Diane agreed, "but how we define family has, for the better, I think." Watching her drive away, I reflected on the journey we'd traveled since those tense days before Lily's birth. The mother-in-law who had once seemed determined to undermine me at every turn had become, if not a close friend, then a respectful ally in the shared project of loving Nathan and Lily. The hospital live stream had indeed changed everything. Not through manipulation or power plays, but through the simple act of inclusion at a moment of vulnerability. By opening a window into our most intimate family moment, we had inadvertently given Diane the opportunity to see beyond her own agenda to what truly mattered. As I closed the door and returned to our home, where Nathan was gently rocking a sleeping Lily in the nursery, I felt profound gratitude for the healing that had taken place. The path forward wouldn't always be smooth. Old habits could resurface and new challenges would arise as Lily grew. But we had established a foundation of mutual respect that could weather the inevitable storms of family life. Sometimes the most powerful response to manipulation isn't confrontation, but compassion. In choosing to live stream Lily's birth rather than shutting Diane out completely, we had offered her a chance at connection over control. The fact that she had taken that opportunity and allowed it to transform her gave me hope not just for our future as an extended family, but for the possibility of change in even the most entrenched relationships. Family, I had learned, was not a fixed entity, but a living, evolving system. With patience, clear boundaries, and a willingness to recognize genuine efforts to change, even the most difficult family dynamics could be transformed. Not erased or forgotten, but reshaped into something healthier and more sustaining for all involved. As I joined Nathan in the nursery, watching our daughter sleep peacefully after her day of celebration, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey with Diane had been challenging, but ultimately rewarding in ways I never could have anticipated when I first received that vow renewal invitation 8 months into my pregnancy. Some dates, it turned out, truly were too meaningful to pass up, just not in the way Diane had originally intended. The morning of Lily's second birthday dawned bright and clear. As I decorated our backyard with pastel balloons and a handmade banner, I marveled at how quickly the time had passed. 2 years since our daughter had entered our lives and transformed everything, including, most surprisingly, my relationship with Diane. "Need any help?" Nathan called from the patio door, Lily perched on his hip in her birthday dress, a frothy confection of tulle and ribbons that had been a gift from her grandmother. "I think I've got it covered," I replied, securing the last streamer. "How does it look?" "Perfect," he assured me, setting Lily down to toddle across the grass. Simple but special, just like we wanted. The doorbell rang, and Nathan went to answer it while I straightened a few final decorations. I heard familiar voices in the hallway and turned to see Diane and Robert entering the backyard, arms laden, with tastefully wrapped gifts. "We're not too early, are we?" Diane asked, looking uncharacteristically uncertain as she set her packages on the designated gift table. "Not at all," I assured her. "You're right on time to help me finish setting up the food." Diane brightened, following me into the kitchen while Robert stayed outside with Nathan and Lily. As we arranged fruit platters and finger sandwiches, I noticed Diane kept glancing out the window at her granddaughter. "She's changed so much," Diane said softly. "Every time I see her, she seems to have new skills, new expressions." "That's the thing about toddlers," I agreed. "They change almost overnight sometimes." Diane nodded, arranging strawberries with careful precision. "I missed so much of that with Nathan and Jennifer," she admitted. "I was always so busy with committees and social obligations, always thinking about the next event rather than the moment right in front of me." The wistfulness in her voice touched me. "You're not missing it with Lily," I pointed out. "You're very present with her." "I'm trying to be," she said. "My therapist calls it mindful grandparenting, being fully engaged in the relationship rather than projecting my own expectations onto it." I smiled at the terminology. "Well, whatever it's called, it's working. Lily adores you." Diane's face softened with pleasure. "The feeling is entirely mutual." As guests began to arrive, a small gathering of friends and family, I watched Diane interact with easy grace, no longer needing to command attention or control every conversation. When my parents arrived, she greeted them with genuine warmth, drawing them into a story about Lily's recent discovery of the joys of puddle jumping. The celebration was simple but joyful. Lily, surrounded by people who loved her, presided over her party with the imperious delight of a 2-year-old who knows she's the center of attention. When the time came for cake, Nathan and I exchanged a private smile as we remembered the elaborate multi-tiered confection Diane had initially suggested. "Are you sure a simple sheet cake is what you want?" she had asked during the planning. "I know a wonderful bakery that could do something really special." "We're sure," I'd replied, expecting resistance. "Lily doesn't care about fancy decorations yet, and this way everyone gets the flavor they prefer." To my surprise, Diane had nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. It's about what she enjoys, not what looks impressive in photos. Sheet cake it is." Now, as Nathan lit the 2 candles on the homemade cake I'd prepared, Diane stood beside my mother, both grandmothers beaming with identical pride as we all sang "Happy Birthday." When Lily blew out her candles with a determined puff, the cheers and applause made her giggle with delight. Later, as the party wound down and Lily began showing signs of needing a nap, Diane approached me with an unexpected question. "Emma, I was wondering if you and Nathan might consider letting Lily stay overnight with us sometime soon," she said, her tone carefully casual. "Only if you're comfortable with it, of course, and whenever you think she's ready." 2 years ago, the idea of leaving Lily overnight with Diane would have been unthinkable. Even a year ago, I would have hesitated, worried about boundaries being crossed or my parenting decisions being undermined. Now I found myself genuinely considering the possibility. "I think she'd love that," I said truthfully. "She talks about Gamma's house all the time. Let me discuss it with Nathan, but I think it could work in the next few weeks." Diane's face lit up with such transparent joy that I felt a pang of regret for all the times I'd assumed the worst about her motivations. Really? That would be wonderful. We could set up that little room across from ours as her special place. Robert's already talking about building her a dollhouse for when she visits." As the last guests departed and Nathan put an overtired Lily down for her nap, Diane lingered, helping me clear away the remains of the party. Working side by side in comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey we'd traveled over the past 2 years. "Penny for your thoughts," Diane said, noticing my contemplative expression as I rinsed plates. "I was just thinking about how different things are now," I admitted. "From where we started, I mean." Diane nodded, understanding immediately. "From scheduling my vow renewal on your due date to being invited for grandparent sleepovers. Quite a transformation." "It's not just you who's changed," I said, handing her a rinsed plate to dry. "I've learned a lot, too, about judging too quickly, about leaving room for people to grow." "You gave me that room when you didn't have to," Diane acknowledged. Quietly. "That hospital live stream. It was a turning point for me. Seeing you there after surgery, still making sure we could be included despite everything I'd done." She shook her head. "It made me see myself clearly for the first time in years." "I'm glad we did it," I said simply. "It felt right in the moment, and even more right in retrospect." Diane carefully set down the plate she was drying and turned to face me directly. "Thank you, Emma. Not just for today, but for all of it. For being patient with my learning curve, for allowing me to have a relationship with Lily, for giving our family a chance to heal." The sincerity in her voice moved me deeply. Without overthinking it, I stepped forward and embraced her. Not the formal, obligatory hug of social occasions, but a genuine expression of the cautious affection that had grown between us. When Nathan returned from putting Lily down, he found us still in the kitchen, sharing stories over cups of tea. Diane recounting Nathan's own second birthday, complete with details I'd never heard before, and me contributing my own family anecdotes. The easy camaraderie between us was still new enough to make him pause in the doorway, a pleased smile spreading across his face. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, joining us at the table. "Everything's fine," I assured him, squeezing his eye. Hand. "Your mom was just telling me about the time you decided to help with her garden party by releasing a box of earthworms onto the patio." Nathan groaned. "I was trying to improve the soil. Dad had just explained how worms were good for plants, and I thought I was being helpful." "You were always trying to solve problems," Diane said fondly, "even if your solutions sometimes created bigger ones." "Speaking of problems and solutions," I interjected, "your mom had an interesting suggestion. She's invited Lily for an overnight stay sometime soon." I watched Nathan's face carefully, knowing he'd been the one most affected by the previous tensions between his mother and me. To my relief, he nodded without hesitation. "I think that would be great," he said, glancing at his mother with a smile. "Dad's been talking about that dollhouse he wants to build her for weeks." "It would just be for one night at first," Diane clarified quickly. "We could see how she does and go from there." "She'll be fine," Nathan assured her. "She loves spending time with you and Dad. And frankly, Emma and I could use a night to ourselves." The three of us continued chatting as afternoon faded into evening. When Diane finally prepared to leave, promising to call later in the week to arrange details, for Lily's stay, the farewell was relaxed and warm, a far cry from the tense, staged goodbyes of the past. After she'd gone, Nathan wrapped his arms around me from behind as I finished loading the dishwasher. "That went well," he murmured, resting his chin on my shoulder. "It did," I agreed, leaning back against him. "Your mom was genuinely helpful and respectful all day. No criticism, no taking over, just appropriate grandmotherly involvement." "It's still strange sometimes," Nathan admitted. "Seeing her like this, more relaxed, more authentic. There are moments when I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, and then I realize it's not going to." "I know what you mean," I said, turning in his arms to face him. "But I think this is the real Diane now. Or maybe it's who she always could have been, underneath all the control and perfectionism." 2 weeks later, we packed an overnight bag for Lily's first sleepover at her grandparents' house. Her excitement was palpable as she helped select which stuffed animals would accompany her on the adventure. "Gamma House," she repeated happily, clutching her favorite plush rabbit. "Lily sleep at Gamma House." As we pulled into the Wrights' driveway, Diane and Robert were waiting on the front porch, both beaming with anticipation. Lily could barely contain herself as Nathan unbuckled her from her car seat, squirming to get down and run to her grandparents. "There's our girl," Robert called, kneeling despite his arthritic knees to receive her enthusiastic hug. Diane hung back slightly, allowing Robert his moment before stepping forward to greet Lily. "We have a special room all ready for you," she told her granddaughter, accepting a sticky-fingered embrace with none of the concern for her clothing that would once have been automatic. As I handed over Lily's bag and went through her routine, when she typically napped, which foods she currently refused to eat, how to handle bedtime, Diane listened attentively, taking mental notes without interrupting with her own opinions. "And call us any time," I concluded. "Day or night, if anything comes up or if she gets upset and wants to come home." "Of course," Diane assured me. "But I think she'll be just fine. We've got plenty of activities planned, nothing too stimulating before bedtime," she added quickly, anticipating my concern. "Just some baking, maybe story time in the garden if the weather holds." Nathan squeezed my hand as we prepared to leave. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded, surprised to find I genuinely was. "I'm good. She's in good hands." The expression of quiet pride on Diane's face at my confidence made the momentary pang of separation easier to bear. As we drove away, watching Lily wave enthusiastically from her grandfather's arms, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey we'd all taken together. "So," Nathan said as we pulled out of the driveway, "what should we do with our 24 hours of freedom?" I grinned, feeling lighter than I had in months. I have a few ideas. Our child-free evening was a delicious luxury. An uninterrupted dinner at our favorite restaurant. Conversation that didn't revolve around toddler milestones or daycare. Options. And the simple pleasure of waking naturally the next morning, rather than to a small voice demanding breakfast. When we arrived to pick up Lily the following afternoon, we found her contentedly helping Robert water plants in the garden, wearing a miniature apron covered in flour, from what appeared to have been a baking session. "Mama! Dada!" she called, abandoning her watering can to race toward us. "Lily, make cookies! And sleep in big girl bed!" Diane appeared from the house, carrying a plate of slightly misshapen but clearly homemade cookies. "She was a perfect angel," she reported, setting down the plate to greet us. "Slept through the night, ate her vegetables, and only had one small meltdown when she couldn't find Bunny before bedtime." "That sounds about right," I laughed, lifting Lily for a hug, breathing in the comforting scent of her hair mixed with unfamiliar fragrances of Diane's baking and Robert's garden. "We've set up a special room for her," Diane said, leading us inside. "Nothing permanent, of course, but a space that can be hers whenever she visits." The guest room had been transformed with care and restraint. A small toddler bed with safety, rails, a nightlight that projected stars onto the ceiling, and a low bookshelf filled with age-appropriate stories. What struck me most, however, was what wasn't there. No elaborate murals or custom furniture, no excessive toys or decorations. That would overwhelm a 2-year-old. "This is perfect," I said sincerely. "Simple but special. She must have loved it." "She did," Robert confirmed, joining us in the doorway. "Read 3 stories before she would agree to sleep, but then she was out like a light until morning." As Robert took Lily back outside to finish their gardening? Diane hesitated in the hallway, her expression unusually vulnerable. "It went well, didn't it?" she asked, seeking reassurance. "We followed all your instructions, tried to keep things as close to her normal routine as possible." "It went wonderfully," I assured her. "Everything about this, the room, the activities, respecting her schedule, shows how much thought you've put into making her comfortable." Diane's relief was palpable. "I want to get this right," she said simply. "Being a grandmother, I mean. It's a second chance, in a way, to focus on what truly matters." Those overnight visits became a regular occurrence over the following months. Lily thrived on the special attention from her grandparents, and Nathan and I appreciated the occasional break from the constant demands of parenting. More importantly, each successful visit built additional trust between Diane and me, cementing our new understanding. One evening in early spring, as we sat in the Wrights' garden watching Lily explore a patch of daffodils with her grandfather, Diane broached a subject that surprised me. "Robert and I have been discussing our wills," she began, her tone carefully casual, "making sure everything is in order for the future." I nodded, uncertain where this was heading. "We've decided to establish a trust for Lily's education," she continued, "something that will be available when she's ready for college or whatever path she chooses." "That's very generous," I said cautiously, remembering the complicated strings that had often been attached to Diane's generosity in the past. As if reading my thoughts, she smiled wryly. "No conditions, no expectations. The money will be there for her to use as she and her parents see fit when the time comes. We just want to help secure her future." "Thank you," I said, genuinely, touched by the gesture and the explicit acknowledgement of our parental authority. "That means a lot to us. There's something else," Diane added, her voice softening as she watched Robert helping Lily examine a ladybug crawling across a leaf. "We've also set aside funds for any future grandchildren you and Nathan might have. Equal amounts, no favoritism. The consideration behind this detail, ensuring fairness among potential siblings before they even existed, was so thoughtful that I felt a lump form in my throat. "You've really thought this through." "We have," Diane agreed. "Family is what matters in the end, not social standing or appearances or having everything look perfect on the surface." She turned to me with a rueful smile. "It took me far too long to learn that lesson, but I'm grateful I finally did." As summer approached, bringing with it preparations for a family vacation, the first time we would all travel together, I found myself reflecting on the remarkable transformation of our family dynamic. The mother-in-law who had once seemed determined to control and criticize every aspect of my life had become a supportive presence, respectful of boundaries, and genuinely invested in our family's well-being. The hospital livestream that had initially been a strategic response to Diane's manipulation had ultimately proven transformative for all of us. By opening a window into one of life's most profound moments, the birth of a new generation, we had inadvertently given Diane the opportunity to see beyond her own agenda to what truly mattered. Not every difficult family relationship had such a positive resolution, I knew. Some behaviors were too toxic, some boundaries too important to compromise for the sake of family harmony. But in our case, with patience, clear communication, and a willingness to recognize genuine efforts to change, we had managed to build something new and unexpectedly beautiful from a challenging beginning. As I watched Lily run across the grass toward her grandmother, arms outstretched for a hug that Diane gladly provided, I felt profound gratitude for the journey we had traveled together. The path hadn't been straight or simple, but it had led us here to a place where family meant connection rather than conflict, where love was expressed through respect rather than control, and where the future held possibilities for closeness none of us could have imagined on that day when Diane handed me the Vow Renewal invitation. Sometimes, I reflected, the most difficult beginnings can lead to the most meaningful connections, if we're willing to keep our hearts open to the possibility of change. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.